Both chambers, the House and the Senate, are back in session this week, but our attention's really focused on a number of hearings and committees. We'll have an important hearing Wednesday in the House Financial Services Committee on regulatory burden facing credit unions and small banks. Then there'll be a series of hearings, one in the Energy and Commerce Committee and one in the House Intelligence Committee, focused on data security and cybersecurity. And then the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Small Business Committee are going to hold hearings on patent reform. We're going to be following all those and submitting statements for the record. On Wednesday, the House Financial Services Committee is going to hold a hearing on regulatory burden facing credit unions and small banks. CUNA is going to testify at that hearing. Patrick Miller, the president and CEO of CBC Federal Credit Union in Oxnard, California, is going to be our witness. And our testimony is going to focus on the need for regulatory relief legislation. Similar to the hearing that we testified at in the Senate Banking Committee last month, we're going to talk about how the banking charter has evolved and how Congress has made accommodations for banks over the last 15 or 18 years, but not much is done to improve the statutory or regulatory environment for credit unions. So we're going to identify the need for that. But the committee's asked us also to really make the story of regulatory burden a little bit more personal. So we'll be bringing stories, experiences, and ideas that we've received from credit unions over the last 6 weeks or so, and we'll be bringing that to the committee so that they understand that the rules that are promulgated as a result of the laws that they pass have an impact on how credit unions serve their members. The key point we're going to drive home is whenever a rule makes it more difficult for credit unions to serve their members or makes the products and services credit unions deliver more expensive or less available, it means that rule has failed. After this hearing, both the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee will have completed their hearings, and so the next step will be for the committee to consider legislation. We've heard reports that the Banking Committee in the Senate might mark up legislation in April. We're hopeful that the House Financial Services Committee actually gets started on marking up or considering legislation even before that. So we could see a markup in the Financial Services Committee before the end of March. The agenda in both the Senate and the House this week are filled with hearings on data and cybersecurity. It's really kind of the issue of the month, and we expect in the next couple of weeks the Senate to consider what's being dubbed as Cyber Week, where they'll consider information sharing legislation coming out of the Senate Intelligence Committee. But for this week, the news is about new legislation that's being proposed by members of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And this legislation is on data security, and what makes it a little bit different than what we've seen in the past is that it not only has a notification component, but it also has security requirements. We're taking a close look at this legislation. We've already been in contact with the sponsors, the staff on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and the staff on the Financial Services Committee. We've got some technical concerns with it. We want to make sure that if it was enacted, it would work right for credit unions. We also have some substantive concerns because while there is some data security standards called for in the legislation, it's purposefully vague. And we'd like to see a little bit more meat on that bone. So we're going to continue to work with the sponsors, with the Energy and Commerce Committee, and with the Financial Services Committee as this legislation moves through the process.